So John, I'll hand it off to you.
Good morning. Thanks, Lindsay. John Sohaki with Next IT. Our key is to improve productivity with reduced risk. Obviously, you saw the title. We're looking at backups today, so we're going to be focusing on that reduced risk part. But Next IT is a managed service provider in West Michigan with offices in Muskegon, Kalamazoo, and Traverse City. I'm currently working out of our Traverse City office, and we've got the west side of the state and beyond covered from those 3 locations. We help businesses from 20 to 200 employees with their IT support. Again, increasing your productivity with reduced risk.
Awesome. And I can attest as well. So, John's at the Traverse City location, but we're over down by the Muskegon location, and Next IT has been helping us over at our company every day with our backups and our technology, and they're right there, and we love working with them. So thank you, John. And then I'll hand it over to Sean with PAX 8. And Sean, you can talk a little bit about what you guys do.
Oh, thank you so much. So PAX 8 is a distributor. So we work really closely with partners across the United States and across the globe as well, like Canada, EMEA, Asia Pac. But our focus, not only being a distributor, is more taking that hands-on approach with our partners, helping, in different stacks, whether today we're talking about backup and recovery of critical information, but from a security standpoint, infrastructure standpoint, Microsoft standpoint, we kind of work hand in hand with a partner to help, educate and show new solutions that are out there, whether it's protecting, Office 365 environments or G Suite, or different security solutions that are out there. So, I have the opportunity to work with partners like John in putting out different solutions that meet the customer's needs. And, my role with PAX 8 is I'm the continuity specialist for, different accounts across the United States. I've been in IT for about 20 years, but really focusing on the continuity space for about the past 15 years. So thanks, everyone, for taking the time to meet with us today.
Well, thank you, Sean. Okay. So for any attendees that have not attended a Next IT webinar before, or if you've been on and you've seen the variety of webinar topics that we do and the type of styles we do our webinars. So this style of webinar, we kind of do like a Q&A back and forth. So what I'll do as the moderator is I'll kind of bring up these topics in relation to the importance of backups with a lot of questions that we get commonly asked from, real life clients in terms of, how to perform these backups, what are the benefits of these backups, and just answering those questions. And what we'll do is we'll kind of bounce back and forth between PAX 8 and John to give sort of real life scenarios and, what people should expect when they dive into getting into backups. So we'll dive right into it, and we'll start with the first question. So why should you have a backup for your cloud solutions like Office 365 or G Suite? This is an interesting one, and I'm very interested in the G Suite side of things as well. So I'll hand it off to John first, I think, and then Sean, feel free to jump right in.
Right. The key here, and I'm sure Sean's going to elaborate on this, is Microsoft and Google are not what you would call continuity specialists. They're productivity specialists, right? They provide the apps and they provide the tools that helps users increase their work. Word, Excel, and the Google things are what most people are using for business. The key here, though, that everything's in the cloud doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. And even more in that, and I'll let Sean take the good bullet here, even Microsoft recommends that you use somebody to back up your cloud data because they're not in the continuity business, they're in the productivity business, right? So even though it's in the cloud, if something happened, you're going to still lose that data. You just got to read that fine print in the Microsoft service agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
John,
yeah,
you got anything to add?
Yeah, no, thanks for the layup, John. I appreciate that. But no, I mean, and it's really a shift. I mean, I've been in the space for a while, and back when everyone had on-prem Exchange, everyone was backing up and protecting it, right? Everyone kept that for years, and it was a major core tier 1 application because it was critical to the business. Now, with the shift of Microsoft Office 365 or Google Workspace, we're moving all those workloads and email into the cloud, which is great, seamless, saving a lot of customers costs and savings that way. But, as John was saying, like Microsoft has a clause, Microsoft 6B, where they're recommending a third party to protect and back up that information because they're only keeping it for up to 30 days for the client. So you think of the world that we live in, communication is so important, and it's all done via email, whether you're sending it out to partners, customers, meeting legal or HIPAA requirements. You need something to back it up, and you need to always go back from something that's longer than 30 days from a compliance standpoint. So we have, a lot of different solutions that not only, protect the information, but actually keep that information and keep it forever and keep it unlimited. So you're not, at that risk from a compliance or, a fine perspective, but also a daily operation perspective. It's like, hey, what is the cost of downtime where you have emails that you need to go ahead and retrieve, and now the world of shifting to OneDrive and SharePoint, retrieving that type of information. It's backup for that Office 365 environment or Google Workplace, where you can always go ahead and retrieve the information, whether it's at email perspective or a file perspective.
And I think the key here is, working with someone like Next IT, right? As we do this and understand all the different perspectives of backups and what's, needed. Yes, we're still doing on-site backups for your file server and all your data there. But as you start moving stuff to the cloud, you have to make sure and pay attention of what is getting backed up. What's that length of time? Like Sean said, Microsoft only protects your data for 30 days. We'll recommend that, and, we can take care of all of these services for you.
It's interesting, Sean, too, that you brought up kind of like that day-to-day downtime of, when those items that you use every day aren't working, when the G Suite or Office 365, and you have to pull up these old, files, like what happens when those are gone and how that affects your day-to-day, like kind of like leading into this question of, when you delete an email or a file by mistake, what happens, where does that go, and how does the cloud help you avoid that freak out in your day-to-day basis of being like, oh crap.
Right. Yeah. And it's that cost of downtime where, like everyone is dependent, whether you're retrieving information from your phone, from your laptop, running to a customer meeting, or, the vulnerabilities of just user error now because everything's at your fingertips. How many times has somebody deleted something when you by accident because you're doing 5 different things?
Yeah.
And this goes back to the Microsoft service agreement, right? They can retrieve that some information for you in those 30 days. But
Right.
I've never had a user come back to me within 30 days and say, hey, can you get that email I deleted last week? It's usually, I had an email back in June or July that I really need, and this is what the subject line was. Can you find that for us?
Right.
And on your old Exchange server, we're doing all the backups. Absolutely, all that stuff is there. Office 365, it's gone. It's an accidental deletion. They have no responsibility to retain that information for you. That's the need for a third-party backup for this type of information.
Right. And just the time perspective, as you said, John, it's like, hey, even if it's in there for 30 days or going after that point, but what is that time to recovery with the tools that are at your disposal now? A customer of yours that you're supporting and doing your services, you can go ahead and retrieve that information back to them in minutes with the search and indexing capabilities, which before, without these types of tools, would take you hours or days to go ahead and get that information back.
That's interesting. And also coming to like a liability standpoint, and this does transition right directly into that, but we've noticed, from a liability standpoint, being able to go into those backups and having hard concrete data of, those emails aren't deleted where X, thing was stated, where, all this stuff. So if your company is required to meet these compliance regulations like HIPAA, PCI, GDPR, et cetera, are you required to do that? And how does that tie into like the liability side of things? And yeah,
I mean, what we were most used to, right, was the tax liability, right? You got to keep your records for 7 years, right? So if your healthcare, HIPAA is, requiring that type of retention as well for protected information. This is just another tool to help you do that.
Yeah,
Sean,
I mean,
anything to add?
yeah, I mean, we see it all the time from a litigation standpoint, keeping at least 7 years from a legal side, and then purging that off from a liability perspective, or with HIPAA, keeping patient information. So, I mean, the workforce has changed. How much communication like I was saying before, is transmitted, whether, it's to a patient via email, you need to keep and save that information for a length of time. If you're doing any communication with, GDPR, sending overseas, any communication has to be saved and retained from, a compliance standpoint. So, there are tools now that can protect that information. And then, just from like we're talking daily operations standpoint, but from a compliance perspective, it's so important for companies to understand, going back to the first bullet, everything is not kept. That's probably the biggest thing. That's the misconception in the world is, hey, I moved everything into the cloud. Everything's there forever. No, you still do need these different tools to meet different requirements, whether it's HIPAA, FINRA, GDPR, and a lot of solutions all through PAX 8 meet all these different requirements, whether it's from a legal perspective or a financial perspective.
And I'm sure everybody's, has seen on the news, if you haven't been paying attention, the cloud is not 100% either. We've worked with companies, and we've got stories of companies that are hosting applications up in the cloud, and then their cloud provider gets hacked from a bad actor in a different state, and now they don't have access to their information, and potentially won't have access to their information. We've heard good stories about the data's been recovered and sent to them. We've had other stories where that cloud business really went out of business. They couldn't recover fast enough, and all their clients couldn't wait, so they pivoted to a different solution to get back up and running while they're seeing if that information came back. Backup has always been the key in the data world, right? Whether it's on premise or in cloud, think of, you've got to have your backups.
Right. And John, you brought up a great point as far as, bad actors. Like, the landscape has completely changed, where before we were always worried about, server failure, user error, hardware error, everything of that sort. So the ransomware space is $1 billion industry. They're not only, attacking, the large clients now today, SMBs to the small customers, because it's easier, and you're not only at risk, whether it's on-prem, but also ransomware attacks are hitting, the big guys within Office 365, AWS, Google. So those environments are exposed as well.
And we're all connected, right?
Right.
10 years ago in Northern Michigan, people would say, obscurity is my best security. That's gone. Everybody's connected, every workstation, every server, all the information is available. Work with a team like NextIT, and we use PAX 8 to help protect your data.
And it's kind of, and to any of the attendees, I know we've discussed this in our past webinars as well, and I think we even have a couple up on our YouTube channel about how COVID also affected this ransomware landscape of people, working from home now, and those targets being those individuals working at home, and how easy it is to get access to that business information through these people's personal computers and phones, working, on their own Wi-Fi at home, and how that completely changed the landscape too. Of it's not just like you said, it's not just these big companies getting attacked right now. It is these remote workers as well, and their backups at risk. So very interesting. And I will move on to the next one. And this I know I've dealt with this and wondered this question a lot. So what is the difference between just a typical backup and that email archive that you have going on in your, email app?
Sean, you got this?
Oh, sure. I mean, and we see a lot, and through PAX 8, we always take an agnostic approach of like, hey, what is the risk to the end customer, and what is the best solution? So when I think of backup, I think of backing up once a day, a couple times per day, giving that client, hey, can they afford to miss something within a couple hours of a given time, but always keeping the history. Now, different solutions, especially with what John is doing with his different client base, are true email archiving type of solutions, which means it's continuous backup. I'll save the technical jargon, but what it means to you as the end client or end user, every single email sent or received is captured and stored and can be stored on the back end and brought back to you at any given point in time. So it is every second, every email that you send or receive is guaranteed that it's going to be stored on the back end. And also the immutability standpoint that it won't be purged unless you specify different retentions off of it. So a lot of solutions out there can go ahead and back up information, but when you get into true email archiving, it's that continuous. So there's zero risk where you're not staggering your backups throughout the day. Everything's captured in real time from a compliance perspective.
And what we're talking, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I think what we're talking about here is, our backup solution is different than the Microsoft archive folder in your inbox, right? Sean and I talked about that a little bit last week or the week before, and there is an archive folder in your Outlook, but I understand as that grows, Microsoft will start charging you additional money to store all of that information. So that's a way to keep some information available. But then again, if Microsoft has an issue, that archive folder goes down too. Our third-party backup is completely different from the Microsoft platform, and we can recover.
No, thanks for saying that, John. And yeah, there's the different things from an backup and email archive, but yeah, the Microsoft plugin is basically creating an extra folder with like 50 gigs or 100 gigs that you're paying for, right? And it's storing it there. What happens when you increase that? What happens that, length of time? Now there's other solutions that keep that forever. And honestly, from a cost perspective, will save you money in the long run and give you a compliant and searchable type of solution. And also, oh, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, and the folder, right? That puts the onus on the end user, right? They've got to put information in there. They're going to forget. They're not going to do it, right? This is why you hire an IT support organization to support your business and the data. Is we're doing that for you. You don't have to worry about that. We've got the processes and the people in place to make sure that happens day in and day out. Like Sean said, every email, every piece of data is protected.
I can attest, because I'm the type of person that does forget. So we have Next IT do it for us, and it's no problem. So yeah, awesome, guys. Okay, cool. So we'll move on to the next question. So do you have SharePoint, Teams, or OneDrive in data? I know a lot of people and a lot of clients out there use that. So
yeah, the big move to Microsoft 365, Office 365, Teams, all of that comes in there. Our backup solution is not just your email. It's all of this data in there. So as you start putting information up into your Teams layout, and you're now directing users to share files through OneDrive and SharePoint on your system, all of that information is important too. And who's backing up that data, right? Commonly, the same principles apply with the Microsoft service agreement, right? 30-day guarantee. That's all they give you. And again, what happens if the cloud gets hit? How do you recover that data?
Yeah, and with the tools that John is using and the service that he provides, it's that guarantee that everything's protected. Not only the emails, but all of SharePoint. Every OneDrive associated to a user you're protecting. Teams information, but it's becoming critical to organizations, like as far as our channels and keeping documents there. You're protecting everything at basically the root level, so it's guaranteed that it can be brought back to you.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of that ripple effect of everything going on. And I know a day in the life of when one of those things crashes, it is detrimental to not only just what that one file that you were looking for that day, but that ripple effect of how that affects everything for the rest of the week, and how then that messes up everything the rest of the month, and then that screws up the year. So, the importance of backups is huge just from that ripple effect standpoint as well. And, I think we answered some good questions here and wanted to give you guys who are still staying on the webinar here a little free offer. So, we talked about backups and we talked about, making the most out of your internet with NextIT and PAX 8. So we want to give you guys a free Wi-Fi for your business. So to redeem that offer, I'm going to move our faces here so you guys can see. You're going to go ahead and email John at so Hacky at next-it.net, or you can reach out to PAX 8 directly as well. And we'll link you up and just mention that you were on this webinar and then link you two together. But we also are going to email all the attendees too with this offer. So you guys don't need to, follow up as well. But if you did want to reach out directly, that is an email you guys can reach out to. But we'll be following up with you guys shortly. So I want to thank John and Sean. Rhymes beautifully, for attending this webinar today and answering some awesome questions, and, finishing out the year on a good note. But I want to remind people and all the attendees as well that we do this monthly. So 2022, we're going to be coming in with some brand new topics and some other awesome guests to join the NextIT team to discuss, the state of internet security and data security in 2022 as well. So with that, we'll follow up with you guys who are attending this webinar after this, but we're going to go ahead and end it and wish you guys a happy holidays and a good new year.
Thanks, Sean, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right.
Appreciate it. Everyone have a great day.
Yes, you as well. Bye.
Bye now.